Hello there, beautiful people. Welcome back to the channel. Just wanted to rant with you guys about something that's been laying a little heavy on my heart. It's something that I've been thinking about for the past few days, and you guys, let me know if you think this makes any sense or if I'm just losing my mind here. Having seen the reaction of the media with regards to the Covington kids, now this is nothing specific to this particular case, right? I mean, in the sense that, we've seen this happen time and time again, just this bitter vitriol towards a particular group of people, namely the political segment that breaks from the progressive orthodoxy. This just entire vitriol. We've seen this a few days ago with the Covington kids. We've seen this um, before with Kavanaugh hearings, and we've seen this many times in between, and I'm pretty sure we're going to be seeing this again in the future. So it's nothing, you know, out of the ordinary for what we're exposed to. But given the kind of radical behavior that we are seeing, I just can't help go back to the radical behavior that I've always known and grown up with as a kid in Bangladesh. So just a little bit of a background. I grew up in Bangladesh. It's a Southeast Asian country. It's a Muslim majority country. And if the name Bangladesh sounds familiar, there might have been a few times where that name, you may have come across it. There was a terrible terrorist attack that we've had in 2016. Maybe you read about it there. In I want to say 2007, 2008, there was this guy that came to the United States and he wanted to blow up the Federal Reserve. He was caught by the FBI before he could do anything. He was actually conned by the FBI because apart from being a terrorist, he was also pretty stupid. And he was from Bangladesh, so I don't know if you guys remember the news headlines back then or a little recently. There was a New York City pipe bomber who was from Bangladesh. Another unsuccessful pipe bomb. The dude blew himself up, blew his own junk up. But that's the thing. So the point that I'm trying to make is that my country is a hotbed of radical Islamic extremists. When I say hotbed, it's very hard for me to explain to you guys. But just to give you guys an idea, there are certain fundamentalist groups within the country that have political representation. And when I say that, I don't mean we elected a few people in parliament and then we figured out that they were radicals. No, 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 no. We're talking about fundamentalist groups. So for example, if you guys want to Google the group Jamaat-e-Islami, these groups have political representation in Bangladeshi parliament, or at least they had up until 2014, 2015, and this isn't the only fundamentalist group. So you can Google their platform and see what they stand for. They're not just local to our country. I think they exist in multiple countries in Southeast Asia. They started in India, I believe. Anywho, so there is a radicalization that I have seen growing up as a child. Our house was always my dad always made sure that wherever we lived, we're always less than 3 minutes from the nearest mosque. I've been that way my entire life, the distance. I remember after 9/11, I've attended sermons where imams were celebrating what happened at 9/11. So radical behavior is not something that I've been too far away from. I've had a good vantage point. Now, I want to compare the radical behavior that I saw with progressive radicalization that I'm seeing in the West. Now, I don't want to alarm anyone or anything, I hate being hyperbolic unless when I'm trying and failing to be funny. I'm not saying there's going to be a progressive caliphate some point in the future and anyone that doesn't accept Karl Marx would be beheaded. I'm not saying that. All I'm saying is, along certain dimensions, the progressive radicalization that I'm seeing in the West is, in my estimates, worse than Islamic radicalization that I've seen. Once again, I want to repeat, along certain dimension, progressive radicalization is worse than Islamic radicalization, and I want to stress, along certain dimensions. Overall, obviously, Islamic radicalization, much more serious problem. But along certain dimensions, progressives are going even below than what I thought would be permitted by even their own morality. Now, if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, let me list down a few things. In the progressive radicals, or in the mind of a progressive radical, there is no path to redemption. And this just absolutely bothers me to a point where I can't even properly articulate. If you listen to even the most radical of terrorists, before they chop your head off, they give you an option: accept our religion or we get rid of you. Terrible option, terrible choice. But even along those people, they realize that there has to be a path to redemption. But you look at the progressives, and there is no path. You make a joke that they perceive to be anti-gay 8 years ago. What do? You apologize. That's not good enough. You apologize again. That's not good enough. You make a joke about a person that happens to be black, and you have no idea that it was black. Do the progressives give you a path to redemption? Do the progressives let you explain? No, you're axed. Your life's work is taken away from you. There is no path to redemption in the progressive orthodoxy. And that's just really bizarre that a group of people can have that kind of moral thinking. So that's something I've been really bothered about. And then there's other things. As bigoted as Islamic radicalization is, even if you go interact with the most bigoted of Islamist radicals, his bigotry is against a particular philosophy. So the Islamic radical, his bigotry is not structured along racial lines or along the lines of gender. Actually, I might be wrong on the latter point. If you're women, you're worth half in the radical Islamic sense. So, okay, maybe that isn't true. But it's not structured along racial lines. To an Islamic radical, a kafir is a kafir, or the Arabic word for non-believer. If you happen to be a white person who's a kafir, they hate you just as much as a brown person who's a kafir, or a black person with as a kafir. Similarly, if you're a white person embracing their ideology, they love you just as much as a brown person embracing their ideology. There's no distinction there. But what I'm seeing with the progressive circles is that their bigotry is being stationed on biological attributes, where they hate people more because of their skin color. They hate certain people more because of their gender. They hate certain people more because of their sexual orientation. And that is just so bizarre. The path that these so-called progressives, enlightened people take along this particular dimension, where they can harbor bigotry based on biological attributes, this is something that I haven't even seen the radical Islamists do. Now, yes, they don't believe gays exist. They don't treat women well. I mean, I know that's an understatement the way I described it. I apologize for that. And the whole non-binary thing, I don't think they're even up to speed on that. So along gender lines, okay, maybe you can say something about this, but this obsession with race and skin color, even those guys don't have that. And then you have this issue where there is a obvious lack of clarity from the progressive squad. So if you talk to a radical Islamic person, terrorist or otherwise, and you tell them, okay, so what is this vision for this caliphate that you want to establish? If the entire world is the caliphate as you promise, then the world's going to go back in civilization for like by 200 years, 500 years, or 1,000 years in terms of everything. In terms of art, science, human rights, in every possible metrics, we're going to go back. Do you really want that? A radical Islamic person will look at you and say, yes, I'm okay with it. I don't care if all of us go back to living in the mountains. As long as we have that, as long as we have one caliphate, we're okay with whatever the consequences. Now, obviously, that's a terrible, terrible ideology. I do not condone it in any way. I mean, I don't have to justify why it's a terrible ideology. But you compare that with the progressive side of things. You ask them, okay, guys, what's the end goal? This anti-Western, anti-American, anti-constitutional beliefs that you guys have, what happens if all those things that you want to get established and you get rid of it? What's the end goal? I mean, this Marxist ideas that you want to implement, it has already been implemented in various parts of the world and failed. Why do you think the time you implement it, it'll be any different? And honestly, these guys will not be able to tell you why it'll be different. These guys will make excuse why it has failed everywhere else in the world, but they will not be able to tell you why they will do it differently. And that is where I see that there's a group of people that's so blinded and devoted to a cause. And by the way, say what you want about the progressives, I definitely don't like them. But they're definitely devoted to the radical cause that they engage in. So for a group of people that's just so blindly devoted to a cause, they do not know what the end result is. I mean, let me know what you guys think. Maybe I'm entirely off base here, but along these dimensions, I want to say that the progressives, they, they've gone lower than even the most vicious form of radicalization out there. Once again, I think progressives, as lousy as they are, not as bad as Islamic terrorists. Cannot stress that enough. I'm just saying the radical behavior that I'm seeing, in many ways, it's it's just way more messed up than even the terrible things that I've witnessed elsewhere. Anyways, you guys, just wanted to talk about this a little bit. I will talk to you guys soon. Hope you guys take care.